There's probably something with fucking energy and something.
And also,
yeah.
I mean, when things are popping off, that's when you gotta make shit.
Yeah.
When you make shit, you make money.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, so JFK got his fucking head blown off.
Fucking go.
He's like, maybe we shouldn't send troops in there.
Yeah.
Like, are you trying to cost us $1 trillion, dude?
Geraldo Rivera was the guy that showed that to the world.
Oh, the Zapruder.
Yeah. Remember?
I don't, but I've seen it, yeah.
That video's wild. It's Dick Gregory and Geraldo Rivera and some other cat.
Yeah.
And they watched the
With
president's
Dick
head
Gregory.
blow off. I know.
That guy's everywhere.
Popular comedian back then.
Yeah.
That's what he was doing. And he brings a fucking video
True.
of the Zapruder film.
Onto a talk show. He's like, hey, everybody check this shit out.
You get to watch Kennedy's head explode on TV.
From-
Can you
clearly
imagine
from the
you're
front.
at home? Who the fuck knows what's on? I'm looking at the TV guide, right? Remember the TV guide? Were you around for TV guides?
Yeah, I was.
Or you would get a TV guide in the Sunday paper, tell you
Yeah.
what all the shows are that are on.
Yeah.
And so you go, oh, okay. Dick Gregory, the comedian, is going to be on the Geraldo Rivera
check
show.
it out.
I'll check it out. And then you're watching, boom, the president's head explodes. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Dude, how about a heads up?
Nope. Intended. God damn it. Yeah, that had to be, especially back then. That had to
Yeah, you didn't even know what was going to be on.
be. Geraldo Rivera is fired. Dude, he's everywhere.
Remember the Al Capone's vault?
No, but then they opened it. It was nothing.
There's
I never
nothing
saw
in there.
it.
was
I
like
never
a
saw
big
it.
live on TV
Yeah.
special.
Oh.
Here we go, and they chip through the walls. Empty room.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, thanks for tuning in.
Probably got good ratings. Everyone was watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he went and interviewed the guys defending the opium field, the poppy fields.
Yeah, what a life that's
It's like, nice. Good Marines you got here. These are great Marines. What are you guys doing? Defending poppies?
Garden
All
heroin.
right.
Oh, it's part of their culture. Yep, part of their culture. Back to you guys at the desk.
Well, what the
Back-
fuck are we doing
Part of
here?
their culture. Preserving heroin.
Yeah. I don't know. It's tough because there's a part of you, like, you want to, like, I recognize I have no idea what's going on. So there's a party that wants to just be like, fuck it, I'll just live my life. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah,
And then there's a part where you're like, well, if you can help, try. But I guess I'd have to do the research to get involved. You know what I mean?
Right.
If the prospect of nuclear war is out there.
I don't think we're really going to be able to help that. You're right. But I think that's also the attitude that people have that allows them to get away with things for as long
everyone
as they
just
have.
goes, fuck it, I can't do it.
Yeah, everyone goes, fuck it, I can't do anything about that. It's very sketchy. I mean, if it wasn't for world leaders, no one would have any conflict with large groups. Like these large groups of people, they're led by people and they have conflicts with other people and they try to steal resources and money and fucking...
Yeah, we definitely wouldn't be trying to fight Vietnam.
No.
We
Well,
wouldn't
we're
go.
not. The proof is in the fact that we don't fight with each other state to state. There's no difference between state to state, and there is country to country, except for constitutions and laws and this and that. But as long as the people can communicate, like if you're going to a place that also speaks the language that you speak, who gives a shit? In America, you can go anywhere, right? You can go to New Mexico, you can go to Florida. Nobody treats you like you're an invader, right? And everybody kind of gets along. But it's country to country that shit gets weird. Now, why? Doesn't make any sense. Why would it? If everything was like the States.
Yeah, it's just a little shit talking.
But imagine, because in continents, right? Inside the United States, it doesn't happen. What happened during the Civil War, right?
Sure.
But it's rare. For the most part, it works out.
Happened once.
And you can go around and do whatever the fuck you... Why
Yeah.
can't that be the case for the whole goddamn world? Well, of course it can. If you don't have, like, leaders that want to steal resources and leaders that want to push arms closer to borders and leaders that want to violate treaties and leaders that want to push things and come up with better weapons and have them pointed towards your city and...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so exhausting.
Yeah, but I get it, though. As soon as I leave this country, like I was in Canada last week, I was like, America's #1, dude. Fuck your country. Yeah.
Especially during COVID. You got to see how ridiculous it is.
Anytime I go to another country, I'm like, dude, America's fucking #1.
Do you think Trump's going to win?
If they run Biden, either DeSantis or Trump will win.
Yeah.
They can't run Biden. Even though he
But
was the most
who
popular
could-
president of all time. How about that? Most votes ever?
Well, he is the best.
What?
He's the best. So if you,
There's nothing there.
What would you, like, what would you do? Is it Gavin Newsom? Like, what would you do? Elizabeth Warren? Like who?
Michelle. Michelle Obama.
If she wants to do it.
Obama. She would win.
Yeah, she would win.
She would win off just, she would fuck those dudes up.
Yeah. Unless so many people have been red-pilled because of this administration and all the wackiness that, like, the bubble people, because it was always kind of 50-50 anyway. The bubble people might go towards that because there's so much insanity on the left.
Here's the bummer: is I was talking with I was with Norman and Liz and Ari, and we were doing a show, and we were talking afterwards about how, like, you know, the classic, like, fucking things seem to be relaxing a little as far as, like, the woke, like, all that shit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, it's gonna get worse. The second this election starts ramping up, we're gonna go right back into it.
Yeah, for
especially
sure.
if it's Trump.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna go right back to where we just were.
Yeah, especially when people think there's a real threat of him winning.
Yeah.
They'll get very hysterical. And if you don't think
We're
that's
gonna
the case,
go right back, dude.
my favorite GIF in all of the internet is that lady with the sock hat and the glasses on her knees when Trump won.
Screaming.
Yeah. It's one of the greatest.
That was the thing. I didn't vote for Trump, but man, when that guy won, I was like, dude, immediately I was like, yo.
Dude, if he wins again, do you know? First of all, how is he? He's all fat and everything, and he's 78, right? But he's so alert.
I know, he's giving speeches, and I'm like,
sounds
God
great.
Damn, that guy's got the juice again.
He's got the juice. He sounds great.
I want to see if DeSantis swings at him. That'll be interesting. If he fights back.
He calls him Meatball Ron. Yeah.
Ron.
That's crude. He's not going to.
Ron said that.
Once,
Oh, that's how he talks shit. Yeah, he goes, I'm not going to say that. What'd you call him? Meatball Ron? I would never say that. It is so funny. He hit, who was it? One of them with pussy. It was, might have been Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio.
You call him pussy?
There was a lady in the crowd, and she goes, he's a pussy. And he goes, what'd you say? And she yelled it again. He was like, he could tell no one else heard it. He goes, she called him a pussy. I would never say that.
He said that out loud? She called him a pussy?
Microphone.
Bro.
Yeah.
Come on, man. He's got comic timing.
He's a pussy. That's terrible. I would never call him pussy.
He's a pussy. That's terrible. During the campaign rally in New Hampshire, Trump hit back, then rivaled Ted Cruz by quoting a woman in the audience who called the Texas senator a pussy. She just said a terrible thing. You do it.
She just said a terrible thing. You know what she said? Shout it out, okay. You're not allowed to say it. I won't say it. She called him a pussy. Crowd went nuts, dude. Oh, yeah, he said, I never expected to hear that from you again.
That's terrible.
He, like, fake scolded her while smiling. You shouldn't say that. He
That's
called
the
him a
president.
pussy. Dude.
That was the president.
And he won.
But he won. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think it's a mess because, you know, by just trying to get someone into the office as a Democrat and picking Biden because he was the most likely to win, they put themselves in a terrible position where he's way too old. Everybody knows it. There's a lot of people that won't vote for him just because of his age. And they're scared that Kamala Harris is going to be president. You know, if she's his vice president again, like, dude, that's a mess. That's a mess. Nobody wants that. That's not working out now.
I think we all realize we fucked up a little.
Yeah.
You see Joe talk, you go, ooh.
Yeah.
We just wanted to be done with the fucking circus.
But who would they get? Who's like affected? It's really just Michelle Obama. I mean, you can see other people having an impact.
Yeah.
But
I don't.
Gavin Newsom, if he hadn't fucked up during COVID, like if COVID didn't happen, Gavin Newsom was fast tracked to be the president.
But Gavin Newsom's like DeSantis, where I'm like, once people hear him talk, they're gonna go, oh. Like Gavin Newsom's just doing Obama.
But
He's doing Obama.
The difference is people don't like Gavin Newsom in his own state. They just take him over a Republican.
Yeah.
And people love DeSantis.
People love DeSantis in Florida.
They get, but there are people that love it. Like he has fans.
I know,
that
but
love him. I don't think Gavin Newsom has a lot of fans.
Here's what I think about
You know what I'm
DeSantis.
saying?
I hear you for sure.
We got busted wearing no mask in a restaurant when everyone's supposed to be masked.
I think with DeSantis, I don't know enough about him. I think people love the idea of DeSantis, where they're like, Florida fucking said, fuck COVID, we're gonna keep, you know,
Right.
They did their thing. So they love the idea of DeSantis, but nobody's ever heard him talk. Nobody's ever seen him talk. And when you do, you go, oh, fuck, this guy's a dork. And you go, God damn it, this is another dork.
I've seen him talk a bunch of times.
I know, I'm just talking about the general public. I think when
You
they
think?
see him talk, right now I'm sure he's doing fine and approval, but nobody's seen him. And when he talks, especially if he starts trying to talk shit back and forth with Trump,
Yeah, that's going to be ugly.
it's going to split that. It's going to be fun, dude. Meatball Ron. Meatball Ron.
Oh, my God. So exciting.
Yeah, it'll be fun. The spectacle will be fun.
The
but
spectacle will be fun, but then it's also the same prospect every time. I never feel good about who's going to be president. It's always like, okay.
Yeah,
It's never like anybody that really is coming along that's going to like revamp the system in some sort of meaningful way. And the only way to do that is to take money out. And they're never going to do that. So let's just fucking keep telling jokes.
Yeah, fuck it. That's what Trump's good for.
Just keep telling jokes. Trump's way better for us. Yeah. In terms of like material?
Trump's good for material, but he's bad for the culture of comedy.
How so?
People get way more touchy because
Right.
all the race, transphobia, and
right,
homophobia
right.
that gets ramped up big time.
Right.
So then people actually get sensitive.
I wonder if that's going to ramp up again or if that's run its cycle.
That shit worked tremendously. Yeah, they're gonna run that playbook again for sure.
All right, dude, let's wrap this up.
Fucking right.
We got shit to do.
Yeah.
All right.
I hope
It's
I
been
wasn't
fun.
totally incoherent there.
No, it's been fun. We've been having a good time.
Remember the shit hoarder?
Yeah, shit order was awesome. All right, I
See
just
ya.
have to pee again,
Yeah.
so I figured it's a good time to wrap it up. Bye, everybody.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
Every now and then, this is good for you, right? What is your like when you? What is your schedule as far as like? Do you allow yourself bad food every now and then?
My vices in the food department are croissants. Thing is, that hits the dopamine button, and it's all about more. I mean, I can sink 5 of those things.
Chocolate croissants are my jam.
I don't adulterate my croissants.
Really?
No, maybe extra butter. For me, it's all the savory salty. So it's croissants every once in a while, or
Have you had a chocolate croissant?
I have.
Pretty goddamn good. You like
I
them?
like that all better.
Really? Butter's nice. Butter's nice.
I think the all butter for me justifies having 3 or 4.
When I lived in New York, I used to love buttered bagels or buttered rolls. They do not have that out here for some strange reason. It's like a common thing. If you go to like a deli in New York, they always had buttered rolls. It was like just a roll with a lot of butter on it. And people would eat that with coffee.
Yeah,
out
they're-
here, they don't have that for some strange reason. Or in LA, they don't have it either.
I like how in New York, when you get a soda, even at a little 7-Eleven type place, they offer you a straw.
Yeah.
It's one of the last civilized things in life to be offered a straw.
You know what I saw? There's a chart. See if you could find this of, you know how we're supposed to be not using plastic straws anymore because turtles are dying. You know that people give you plastic. They give you paper straws.
I remember the 6-pack container, those plastic things you see the
Oh
seagull thing around.
yeah, like
that
the
was
turtle where it
that was
like
the picture.
constricted his shell. Have you ever seen that one? Like it got around a turtle when he was little, and as he grew, the shell became like an hourglass. It was really gross. But there was this chart of the countries in the world that pollute the ocean the most, and it's fucking stunning. And if we stop using plastic straws, we're not gonna put a fucking dent in it unless they do. Like we're not even close to number 1. We're not even close to number 6. Like the leading countries that pollute the ocean, I think number 1 was Philippines.
I was going to say Southeast. Why would Southeast Asia have that issue?
I would imagine that when people are very poor, the last thing they're concerned about is not polluting. I would think that.
I've seen those images of those giant like icebergs of plastic junk.
Yeah.
And I always hope that's not real.
Oh, it's real. Yeah, Boyan Slot is a gentleman who's been on the podcast before. Has developed this device for it's like It sifts the ocean. It's like it floats over the top of the ocean, and it has this collector that sucks up plastic, and then they take that plastic and use it and recycle it and make like eyeglasses out of it and all sorts of other different things.
Yep.
Like, okay, so number one is China.
By a wide
By
margin.
a wide margin.
Wow.
Countries polluting the oceans the most. Annual metric tons of mismanaged plastic waste and total amount ending up in global waters. This is fucking insane. So China is 8.80 metric tons. Indonesia's number 2 with 3.2. Philippines is number 3 with 1.9. You go all the way down to the United States, 0.30.
Well, China's got no excuse because their GDP's way up there. They could actually
Yeah.
manage it. But some of these other countries, as you mentioned, are definitely lower GDP relative to the United States and China.
For sure. Like, yeah, definitely like Malaysia, Nigeria, but
China's got no excuse. That's incredible.
yeah.
Some of that them buying our stuff though. When we sell our trash.
We buy it from them, bro. I mean, trash.
Yeah.
Buy their
like
trash.
they take it and we're like, here, you deal with it. I've heard of that happening. I don't know, not to a gigantic extent like that. I don't know about them.
Right, for waste management, right? Yeah, like they might have a company that handles that. Perhaps. I mean, but also they produce so many plastic things. I mean, think about the amount of things that are plastic that are produced in China. That's pretty extraordinary.
I remember for a while there was a discussion about kids' toys with the coloring, you know, and the toxins and plastics.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know if we're going to go there because we might as well, right?
Okay.
Well, it's interesting for starting 2019, I started posting things on Instagram, so I got my stuff out. Then I was going on podcasts, and now we have a podcast, right? But I'd stayed off Twitter largely until this last year when I started putting a lot of stuff there. So you put stuff there, you start reading stuff there.
Oh, no.
And then, well, what's been really interesting to me is I followed this whole lab leak thing, right? Because early in the pandemic, people in my field started chattering about that. I love exotic animals, not to own them, right? But I'm really interested in animal conservation. And so the pangolin is an amazing animal. They pinned it on the pangolin early on, right? And there were articles published in good journals, several of which I'm on the editorial board for. So early in the pandemic, there were papers coming out really fast about, the sequence of the virus in pangolins, which were being sold in the Wuhan market, et cetera. And I was pretty disturbed by this, mostly because of the pictures of the Wuhan market. That exotic animal trade is just, it's horrible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, close confinement, these are beautiful animals that there's no justification for this stuff. But pangolin meat is sold at, I forget what it is per pound, but it's sold, it's a delicacy, it's considered very lucrative to get pangolin meat, of all things. There's actually a female pangolin meat influencer on YouTube and
Really?
Oh yeah, no, it's like it starts to look like pangolin meat ASMR. It's crazy and disgusting. So they're kind of mixing, sexy women with exotic meats from these rare animals. It's just awful. So I was going deep down this rabbit hole of trying to understand this exotic animal trade, and then there was chatter in my field about the fact that one of the members of the laboratory in Wuhan that was working with these very high restriction viruses had done her training in the United States, which is true, has a master's degree, but was running a laboratory, which is unusual, right? Typically, the head of a laboratory is someone with a PhD, MD, or both. Very rare for a so-called PI, a principal investigator, like me, or another Matt Walker, for instance, a principal investigator, to have less than a PhD. The fact that she ran a lab, or was important in running this lab as a master's, with only a master's, is unusual. And then there was a lot of chatter in my field about the idea that it might have something to do with the fact that her significant other was a member of the Chinese Communist Party. And so, that laboratory had deep ties to the government and vice versa. And that's true of all laboratories in China, all laboratories. So the whole notion of the lab leak hypothesis was not foreign to scientists like me. We thought, my laboratory works with rabies viruses, adenoviruses, Synbis viruses. None of these are as biohazardous as something like the coronavirus. But you work with these viruses and you have to use, lab coats, gloves, bleach sterilization. You're careful, hoods of but human error happens. So I'm not at all convinced, one way or the other, that it was a deliberate leak. But the idea that it would leak from a laboratory to a scientist like me who has what's called a wet lab, where you with solutions and beakers and things of that sort. Things happen all the time. Not in my laboratory. We're very careful, and everyone's checked up on often. The idea that human error could cause this is like, it was an of course to all scientists.
Well, they had
on.
been cited in 2018 for violating safety protocols.
I mean, all it takes is, people might not be familiar with what pipetting is, but it's basically taking a little straw that sucks up, press a button, it sucks up some fluid. You move things, between little tiny vials. It can be done by robots too, but typically it's done by humans, and that's how you put it in a centrifuge, spin it, take off a little piece of that, or take the pellet out of the bottom that spun down, this kind of thing. All it takes is one loose thumb, and it's on a lab coat. All it takes is that lab coat going on a rack. All it takes is somebody leaving work, putting their lab coat on there and touching that lab coat, and it's out in the world. Like, it's not that complicated.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be that somebody had a plan to let this out. It could be. I don't have any knowledge of that. But the idea that it would come from a lab, to me, is far more plausible than the idea that it came from some pangolin sequence in the Wuhan market. So I think we were going down the wrong path on this for a long time, and I thought, this is kind of bananas, and now everyone's so shocked. It's like, I think to people who work in biomedical research, of course this sort of thing can happen. Of course. Because human error is the cause of most of these kinds of things.
Well, it was very clear that there was a concerted effort to dismiss the idea that it came from a lab, and it wasn't logical and it wasn't scientific. This episode is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. It's very difficult to stand out, especially if you're a business owner and you want to attract the most talented people to hire for your team. But ZipRecruiter makes it easy. And right now, you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. You can get your job noticed by the best and brightest candidates with ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to this exclusive web address to try ZipRecruiter for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more. And they ignored all the evidence that seemed to point that it originated from that lab, including the people that worked in that lab who got sick. And now there's some new stupid story in the New York Times about a raccoon dog. They're saying it might have come from a raccoon dog.
The civet? Is that the
No.
Okay.
So it's some sort of a raccoon dog. A civet is actually a cat.
It's like a ferret type thing, right?
A civet is like in the cat family, I believe, and it's that's where you get Kopi Luwak coffee from.
Oh yeah, from the poop of
Yeah.
civet.
Have you ever had it?
Oh, it's the Luwak coffee.
Yeah. It's actually very good.
Yeah, when I was a postdoc, there was
So
interest.
this is it.
That's the raccoon dog.
Yeah.
That
so
one
this
doesn't
is-
eat coffee beans.
I don't think so.
Doesn't
Maybe
look
it does.
doesn't look like it.
It's a member of the canid family. It's also
It's a beautiful one.
go that back to where you were. A group that also includes domestic dogs, and the only member that hibernates. Oh wow, they hibernate. Interesting. But here's the problem. Sagar and Jetty was actually explaining this to me on Saturday night. He was like, there's direct evidence of people being infected that predates this establishment of this animal testing positive in that wet market. So I guess people were eating that animal. Is that the idea? But many months before that, people were sick from this. Like, this is, what was this in? I believe it was in December of 2019. Is that what they're saying? November or December of 2019.
And it was March 2020 when everything kind of blasted, right?
Yeah, but it was September or August of 2019 when the first people were infected. So it predates it by a considerable amount.
I think the lab leak hypothesis is far more plausible.
Well, the ferment cleavage site, this thing that they've established that it seems to indicate that this virus was manipulated. Like, this is the furin cleavage site, excuse me.
Yeah, there too, we hear about gain of function research, and now everyone associates gain of function of this particular virus. But gain of function research happens all the time in essentially every laboratory in the US and abroad that does mouse genetics. You knock out a gene and you ask what happens to this animal in the absence of a gene. And then you knock it in and you see if it replaces that. Because in humans, human genetics is only loss of function. You don't have the option yet. CRISPR will allow this to put things back in that are missing. And so gain-of-function research is extremely common. Right? We do it in
Yes.
we're no longer working on animals, to be clear. We only do human studies now. But this is something that you're trained to do as a postdoc. Everyone learns loss of function, gain of function. You need to do both. You know, the gain of function, actually there is that one CRISPR experiment, it's really interesting science out of China. A guy, he actually was a postdoc at Stanford, worked for a guy named Steve Quake, and then separately on his own, without permission or anything from Stanford, went off and started his own laboratory in China. And stood up at a meeting a few years ago and said he had done CRISPR in human babies. This has been done.
Yeah. He was arrested for this, right?
Yeah, he mutated the HIV receptor, which everyone thinks, okay, that was designed to prevent these babies from getting HIV. It turns out that that mutation is thought to perhaps enhance memory by sort of parallel mechanisms. And then it was very unclear for a short while whether or not this guy was either going to get a Nobel Prize or whether or not they were going to throw him in jail. And so everyone was very tense and waiting in my community, thinking, okay, because when somebody's kind of up for a big discovery like this, everyone kind of circles maybe wanting that maybe they should be involved in getting the accolades. But as the moment that the international community, I think rightfully so, said, this is horrible, you can't do this, there's no ethics committee, you need to think about what you're doing. Everyone was like, I had nothing to do with this guy, I never had anything. And, you know, there was a deep excavation of emails and all sorts of, everyone was like, I got nothing to do with this guy. So it was pretty interesting. Then China said, oh, we're gonna punish him. But I'd be willing to bet both hands that his punishment consists of a jail cell that is pretty luxurious with a laboratory. There's no question that CRISPR is going on there. CRISPR is going on in certain regions of other locations on the globe where things aren't as regulated. Because think about the potential payoff for being able to rescue a Huntington's mutation, right? A Huntington's chorea mutation that has somebody at some point in their life, you know, unable to control their arms, hemiballismus of the arms.
What is it?
Huntington's disease. It's a deterioration of the parts of the brain that control motor function. The parts of the brain that control motor function have two main pathways. One is a go pathway, like reach for this coffee mug. And the other one is a no-go pathway, resisting movement. And the no-go pathway degenerates substantially, other things too. And people with Huntington's chorea end up with these writhing ballistic movements. And it's an inherited disease, so you know what gene. It's the Huntington gene. And if you know that your, for instance, parent has it, you can get tested for it. A lot of people don't want to get tested. They don't want the answer because it's late onset. So you can be normal a certain portion of your life and then get it. It's a tragic disease. But if you test positive for this gene, you know you're going to get Huntington's. In which case, with CRISPR, you could just put the gene back in and rescue function.
What causes someone to eventually succumb to that disease? If it's a late onset disease, if they don't have it when they're young and they develop when they get older, what changes?
Yeah, so it's not just deterioration of those particular neurons, it's deterioration of the neurons that control those neurons. And everything's working in a kind of a top-down suppression all the time. In fact, the head neurosurgeon at Neuralink, who's somebody I know quite well named Matthew McDougall, he came up through my laboratory. Elon made a great choice in hiring him. Told me recently, the best way to think about the frontal cortex is that basically its main job, besides picking context and strategy for a given situation, is to tell certain parts of your brain that really want to do things. That's the best description I've ever heard of prefrontal cortex. You know, it's what's keeping Jamie from doing things that he shouldn't right now, and me doing things that I shouldn't right now. And every time you have a crazy idea, like, maybe I should jump off this bridge. Why would I think that? I'm not. That's a healthy operation of your brain saying, I want to because I'm kind of curious, but I don't want to, so I'm not going to.
Right.
With Huntington's, what happens is just slow deterioration of those neurons, but there's a lot of deterioration of these neurons that control motor function. And eventually what happens is the deeper neurons that control motor function start shutting down the autonomic functions like breathing, heart rate. And so eventually people just succumb to some basic, we call them housekeeping functions. You know, so they'll have to be on a respirator, and they have to, they have to use a catheter tube, and, they have to defecate into a bag. And, at some point they just become a deteriorated mess of neurons. So what's first to go there, however, is the control of motor function. And it goes first in the direction of too much activity because of all these brakes and accelerators that we have in the brain. So in any case, CRISPR, gene manipulation of the sort that this guy did in this laboratory in China, again, I think an ethics committee needs to tell the world or decide for the world what people should be allowed to do and not do. But you can imagine for something like Huntington's, it would be tremendously advantageous. Like if you had a child who you knew was someday going to get Huntington's, you'd want to do it CRISPR mutation and put the healthy gene back.
Is there anything that's been shown to slow down the progress of Huntington's?
There I'm not so versed. It's a little bit like MS, another neurodegenerative disease, multiple sclerosis, where certain things exacerbate it, like inflammation of any kind. And those things can be almost random in some ways. Like some people who have MS will salad dressing with mustard in it have a huge inflammatory response and have a flare-up, blurry vision, and get worse. And then it returns to
Mustard.
Things like mustard. Is
mustard inflammatory?
Well, mustard isn't necessarily whole body inflammatory, but if it's spicy mustard, it binds to what's called the substance P receptor or the capsaicin receptor. We have receptors for anything that's kind of hot and spicy, and those are the same receptors that respond to hot liquid. Heat and spicy, obviously, very, very closely linked, and pain, all three of those very close. Whereas pain relief, very closely related to menthol and cool, not just the taste, but the actual physical sensation of cool. So heat, pain, and inflammation kind of are cousins in this sense, and cool, menthol, and lack of inflammation are also cousins in terms of receptors, neural circuits, this kind of thing.
So can spicy food cause inflammation?
Sure. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but I think one of the best ways to think about inflammation, and here I definite hat tip to Lane Norton, who we both know, and Andy Galpin, who both really impressed upon me the fact that if we were to measure somebody's blood pressure, inflammatory markers, heart rate, and cortisol during a hard workout, and you didn't know they were doing a hard workout, I just handed you the data, and you're a medical doctor, you'd say, this
Right.
person's dying.
Right.
So inflammation is robust during hard exercise. But I think what's so incredible about the human body is that the increase in blood pressure, inflammation, etc., is what triggers the adaptation so that blood pressure and inflammation, etc., are all much lower the other 23 hours of the day. And so there's something special about our system whereby, maybe if you had really hot peppers, like the most famous of these is the Carolina Reaper. That's the Carolina Reaper.
I have some in my hot sauce. Yeah.
Someone ate
Senor Lechuga made me this trio of hot sauces.
There's
Reapers in there.
is that a person or is it
It's a brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be awesome.
There's 3 hot sauces that we developed. One of them is my friends over at Half Face Blades. They developed this one that I really like, so he added that to my little 3 collection, and it's like, I think it's Reapers, sun-dried tomatoes.
Yeah.
And
there were clothes in the bin to the right that were dirty, so I just assumed you were putting those off to the side to clean.
tomatoes and some other stuff, and truffles. It's really good.
Amazing.
Pretty
Yeah,
smart.
and then he's got 2 other ones. One of them with habanero, and but there it is. Those are the 3. Yeah. So if you like hot shit, I like it hot. This stuff is like legit. So one of them is heirloom tomatoes, winter truffles, and reapers. That's the Half Face Blades cooperative. And then the other one is, I don't even know how to say that word. Chulacale? How do you say that? Chulacale?
I'm not good. I'm in Texas. I'll embarrass myself.
Get your cursor off that, please. Colima salt and ghost pepper. That one's rough. It's really delicious though. And the other one's habanero, urfa chili, and paprika. And I love them all. But I like really hot.
Well,
like if you're like, boy, this Tabasco is rough, stay the fuck away from that stuff. Because the stuff I like is pretty rough.
Well, the Carolina Reaper in small amounts, I'm sure you can spice it just right. There are these pepper eating contests that people.
Oh, I've seen them. We've played them on the podcast.
So a few years back, somebody ate a Carolina Reaper and ended up with what's called thunderclap headache. Thunderclap headache is a massive inflammation of the meninges of the brain. So you got your brain, it's sitting in fluid, everyone knows that, and then there's some thick dura stuff around it. There's thick fibrous tissue. Like, well, you're a hunter, so when you want to take the brain out, people think, oh, you just kind of pop the brain out. You need a sharp razor, really sharp scissors to get through a sharp knife. The swelling of the meninges is what happened to this person. They got an unbelievable headache, and it's actually inflammation-induced brain damage. Now, that's only eating an extremely hot pepper in huge quantities.
how many peppers did this guy eat?
I don't know. I think
Just eating one of those things, like, in the pepper sauce, my stuff, it's like the tiniest amount. It'll wreck you.
Yeah, thunderclap headache. We know a couple other things about spice. And here I want to make sure I give proper attribution. The Nobel Prize was given a couple of years ago to a guy down at the Scripps Institute in San Diego, Ardem Patapuchin, and David Julius at UCSF for the discovery of these receptors for pressure, cool, heat. And it's an amazing set of discoveries that just occurred really in the last 10 years. We know that all of those pathways go to areas of the brain that are involved in, of course, like behavior. Like if you touch something really hot, you taste something really hot. For most people, they're going to resist that. But also to the hypothalamus, which houses all these hormone control areas, etc. People who can tolerate stronger spice, men and women, we know it's correlated with higher levels of circulating testosterone. That, I think, is interesting. What we're really talking about is higher pain threshold. And you and I have talked before about if there's one clear effect of testosterone, it's that it makes effort feel good. That pain starts to have a little bit of a come hither kind of thing to it. It feels a little bit enticing when testosterone levels are elevated. When testosterone levels are lower, or people have lower levels of testosterone, effort feels more overwhelming. How's that? And the other thing is that ingestion of spicy peppers resets your calibration for what's spicy. I think we know that too. And in a way that also adjusts people's pain threshold. So if people get better at eating hot peppers, they're better at dealing with all types of pain. And I find this fascinating because I know you and I are both kind of obsessed with ice baths and cold plunges. Yeah. And I've been going deep into that literature around cold and what's really known about cold thermogenesis and not known. And it seems like these acute adrenaline, acute pain pathways, they do exactly what exercise does, which is in the moment, if you were to measure somebody's inflammation, etc., you'd say this person is dying. They're in a terrible state. They might as well be getting, open heart surgery with no anesthesia, the way some people react to the ice bath. It's kind of silly to us, but for people that don't like the cold, they're like, you got to be kidding me. I'd never go near it. They try and disparage it. They try and poke every hole in the data. They're just scared, right?
Yeah.
They're just scared. We know this. But they are actually the people that benefit the most because that really acute adrenaline spike, that pain that you feel, creates a higher pain threshold later, higher threshold for work output, all the things that most people seek. And so to me, it's always interesting that you have to look.
doing in there, Ma? Okay, alright. You want it better now? Yep. Alright, just call me up so I can say goodnight. Love you. Life could be a dream. Life could be a dream. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da.
To look what's happening during, and you have to look at what's happening afterward. And for some reason, as humans, we like these creature comforts of massages, which are great. You know, the sauna, which is great, although if you crank it up really hot, it's work at some level.
It's always work at the end.
There's that
The
moment.
last 5 minutes of a 25-minute session at 190 degrees, that's work.
Yeah, and there's something about the burning in the nose for me. At least my heart rate starts like I want to get that.
Burning in the nose. So are you using water on the rocks a lot?
Yeah.
So that's what's giving you the burning in the nose?
Yeah. I'm, you know, it's always hard to know how hot it is right at the place where it reaches your body. But I've been cranking it way, way up.
Like what temperature?
Like 260.
What?
260, but I
260.
but I cover my head.
Why?
So
What are you, a brisket?
No,
What the fuck are you doing?
Well, what I found
Why?
is
Why are you doing that?
So what's interesting is your desire to get out of the hot tub or the too hot tub is because of burning on the skin, right? But your desire to get out of the sauna is usually a brain thing. You'll notice this because if you go to a Russian banya, they all wear the little wool hats.
Yeah.
That's to insulate their brain against the heat so they can stay in at hotter temperatures. So I'm in at 260, but I've got my head covered with a wool cap. So it doesn't feel as stressful. But I'm doing it because I like to sweat.
If it doesn't feel... This episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. You've heard me talk about AG1 a lot. I take it all the time. It's delicious, it's great for you, it's easy to use, and it's a nice way to start the groundwork for a morning routine. I love AG1 because it makes covering my nutritional bases very easy. Each scoop contains 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens that can help me function at my best. And if you've been thinking about giving AG1 a shot, just go for it. It's simple, it tastes great, and it's a great way to start your day on the right foot. Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at athleticgreens.com/Rogan. The travel packs are awesome. I bring a handful with them when I hit the road, so I never have to miss a day. Tap the banner or visit athleticgreens.com/Rogan to learn more. Feel as trustful wouldn't have less of a positive effect?
Okay, so this is great because what you're starting to do is tease out the variables. So this is where I think it gets interesting. You can get better at sweating. I know fighters do this in preparation for dropping weight. You can get better by doing more sauna. You get to be a better sweater, which means that you can cool more easily, even in clothes or if you're out running or hunting or doing anything. So there's some advantage to being better at sweating. And sweating itself is a whole interesting story. You actually have nerves that control the sweat glands. That's actually controlled by little nerve endings. And those pathways can grow very, very quickly in the presence of heat. So what I've been trying to do is learn how to dump heat better. And if I don't use the hat, what happened was I was getting up to 220 and I'd sit in there for 45 minutes and this is not doing anything for me. I want to increase my sweating.
Have you brought in an independent thermometer?
You're not trusting the 260?
No.
No. So what I did is I haven't. So
who makes your sauna?
This is Dundalk. But so what I had the guy do who installed it for me is put the thermometer down low.
Right.
Because it's a trigger, right? It's going to shut it off when it hits a certain temperature.
Yeah.
So what I'm really trying to do is get it really, really hot down near the floor. Because then when I stand up when it's that hot, I'm just ready to pass out. No chance.
Yeah.
But I think Laird, I don't want to get this wrong on the numbers, but I know Laird brings his Airdyne bike in there.
Mm-hmm. With oven mitts on.
So he's got to be putting himself at least 260, right?
Himself? I don't think he has his sauna set at 260.
No.
I think his sauna set in the 200s, though. I think it's like 215 or 220.
But pedaling on the Airdyne,
No, he's a psycho.
Yeah, that's psycho.
But he's a different kind of human being.
Yeah. But I'm contrasting this with cold.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, that's the difference. Are you going cold and then 260?
I'm a wimp. I start in the cold for a minute, then I go into the sauna, then back into the cold for 2 minutes, back into the sauna, then 3 minutes.
But you're not a wimp. Why are you saying that?
Well, listen, if I were tougher, I'd go 5 minutes in the cold straight off.
Yeah.
But I just had Susanna Soberg out for a podcast, and she taught me some really interesting things. First of all, this has really helped. I did this.
We should explain that she's the woman who created the Soberg principle.
Yeah. Susanna Soberg did her PhD in Denmark. Is I think one of the best scientists in terms of deliberate cold exposure and its benefits, because she actually did something that's remarkable, not just in that field, but overall, which is that she employed real-world type experiences and exercise of deliberate cold and sauna and turned it into a very rigorous study of brown fat thermogenesis, which is this think of it as sort of like the oiling the candle of your body, increases mitochondrial function, and thermogenesis heats you up. Metabolism, subjective well-being, sleep, etc. She did all of that and published this in Cell Reports of Medicine. And I realize it's just one study, but to do that studies on humans is hard. To do it with multiple variables is even harder. And to do it in a real-world context is even harder. So what she showed was that if people get 11 minutes of deliberate cold exposure per week total, and this is divided up into sessions of 1 to 3 minutes, it's even. just not 11 minutes all at once. They fundamentally change the amount of brown fat that they have, which means they fundamentally change the number of mitochondria in the brown fat, which means they fundamentally change their thermogenic properties in their body. Now, the people who don't like cold say, well, the increase in metabolism wasn't enough to offset more than a few bites of a bagel or something. But that's not the point, really. What she also showed was that this increase in thermogenesis allowed people to be more comfortable in cold environments, even when they're not in the cold. And then people say, well, who cares, right? I'm throwing a jacket. But what she was able to show is that the ability to be comfortable in the cold correlates with a bunch of other important immune functions and metabolic functions and insulin sensitivity, which is a good thing. And the inability to do that is likely to not be healthy for us. She also showed that 57 minutes per week is the threshold for sauna. So if people get 57 minutes per week uncomfortably warm but safe sauna exposure, they can get very similar effects. And then that gave rise to this question I always said, do you end with cold or do you end with heat? And she said, end with cold because then your body's forced to warm itself back up. And that's what's now called the Soberg principle, which is when you end with cold, your body has to use its natural machinery to heat back up. In talking to her recently, I learned some really interesting things that I've been incorporating. First of all, I've always avoided putting my head under until the very end in the cold. Turns out that if you put your face in the water right as you go in, you activate the mammalian dive reflex. And this reflex increases the so-called parasympathetic activity of the autonomic nervous system, which is just nerd speak for it lowers your heart rate, it makes you calmer, and it makes you better able to tolerate stress. So try this next time. You could even just put your face in before.
I go right under.
You go right under. So that's the right way to do it.
Plug my nose, I go right under.
So I didn't know this. A lot of people that do deliberate cold get headaches, they don't feel good, and a lot of times it's because they slowly immerse themselves up to the neck. And then right at that interface of cold and hot, it creates the change of vasoconstriction right below, a little bit of vasodilation above. They get headaches, they don't feel good, their heart rate is way too high. Putting your face under
Isn't
really
that
helps.
anxiety, though? I just feel like that's all psychological. I really do, because there's a moment when you get in the cold where there's a part of your brain that goes, let's get out of here. You can get out of this if you will just get out right now. And you got to go, shut the fuck up. But if you don't say shut the fuck up, then that thing runs rampant through your brain. And that kicks your heart rate up, and that kicks your anxiety up. I really think it's psychological.
Well, it's psychological and it's physiological. So here's
Right, physiological because of psychological.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's what we know for sure. For the first 20 to 30 seconds of cold shock when you get in, which is how it's described, that prefrontal cortex that normally has the job of handling context and says shh to the reflexes of the brain and the impulses of the brain is not active for 20 to 30 seconds. So your reflex to get the hell out of there is there's a clear and logical reason. After that 20 or 30 seconds, the forebrain starts coming online again. That's your opportunity to start negotiating with yourself. Oh, this is actually good for me. This is, I can handle this. I got through that, so I can get through the next one. What I've been doing recently is trying to not go for time, but going for, the only way I can describe this would be walls. Like sometimes just getting in the thing is a wall for me. So I go, okay, I got over one wall just getting in the damn thing. Then like, oh God, here it comes. Forebrain shutting down, I'm panicking. I'm gonna get through this. And then I'm watching for when I have the impulse to get out. And what I start to notice is that the gaps between those walls start getting longer and longer.
The more you do it.
The more you do it.
You have one at your house?
I do. Yeah, and then pretty soon what's happened
How
is...
cold is it?
It's hard. I suppose it's probably in the low 50s.
What?
Low 50s or
Why is it so
40s.
warm?
I don't know, low 50s, high 40s.
Why do you do that?
Staying there longer. I don't know. Well, we have two. I confess we have the Morozko one, which is that one's really cold. And that one is...
You avoid that one.
Sometimes.
Look
I
at you.
like to go in the sauna first.
I don't like what I'm hearing.
And, well, here's the thing. I've been doing longer exposure in the warmer one.
That's so much easier, though.
It is.
We had one here that was kind of broken, and
Yeah.
it was at 54 degrees.
Okay, that's
and
too
I climbed
warm.
in, I'm like, this is a fucking joke. What, 50's okay,
Yeah.
though?
All right. I listen, what...
34.
34
That's
is where
what
you're
I
at.
like.
Yeah, you and Kim Haynes.
34.
Listen,
I like it where the ice breaks
I just
off the
got
bottom of the thing and
Nice.
floats to the top.
you realize I just uninvited myself on the Cam Haynes hunting trip because he was like, you should come hunting. I've never gone. But I think he'll probably just say I'm on the west side until I get down to the 30s. It's cold.
No.
I
he's
did
not
a
gonna
workout with
invite
him.
you.
I went up there. I was sore for 2 weeks. Those high rep weight workouts.
Yeah.
They're insane.
Yeah, he does a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, like I'm a slow, lazy bear in the gym. Like I like to lift heavy, rest, this kind of thing.
Well, he does a lot of endurance work.
Right.
He does a lot of his stuff is about muscular endurance and pain threshold and, what you can tolerate. It's all repetitions. Because repetitions, like if you just do 3 to 5 reps, it's pretty easy. As you said, testosterone rewards, that kind of effort. There's a big difference between that kind of stuff and he's an ultramarathon runner. He likes to push the mind.
Yeah. Well, I'll do the long runs. I do a long run on Sunday. I did 2 hours yesterday. They call it a lake, but it looks like a river.
It is a river.
Okay.
It's a branch of the Colorado River.
So I kept going around that thing until I couldn't go around anymore. But I need to go colder. I will get in the ice one.
What is this will need to go? Why don't you just do it?
Well, there are mornings I'll just jump in the cold one for 30 seconds.
I do it every fucking day. I don't have any negotiation.
No.
There's no negotiation.
No, I'm not saying I don't go in every day. I'm saying I don't always go into that one first.
I go first thing in the morning.
Okay. Well, you're a better
what I
man.
do. No, it's
We
not a
already knew
better
this.
man. It's just do it. It's just if you have all these this negotiation room and all this leeway, then you won't do it. If you just, I brush my teeth every day. Do you?
Twice a day.
Yeah. Well, get in the fucking cold. Just do it.
All right, I'll start going.
Just
ice.
do it. It's 3 minutes. But in the beginning when I first got it, I would procrastinate. I'd get a cup of coffee, and then I looked down at my phone. It was 12 minutes later. I was like, I already be done.
Okay.
I would have been done 8 minutes ago.
Well, I'm gonna get thermometers. A second thermometer for the sauna. Verify. I'm gonna verify the data. Second independent measurement and the cold. I may have to imagine that the Morozko one, because it has pieces of ice floating in it, it's got to be colder than 50.
Yeah, I bet it is. You can tell if the Morozko has 2 lids. You have the lid where you climb in, and there's another lid where the equipment is. If you lift up that equipment lid, you'll see a thermometer.
Okay.
You'll see a digital thermometer that's a setting. It's like what it's set at and what it's actually at.
Okay.
And I guarantee you're probably in the 30s.
Okay. So I've been doing shorter exposures there, and then longer exposures in the 50.
What's the longer in the 50?
Well, I'm in there a while.
Like how long?
So that one, when I go in there, I'm staying 10, 20 minutes. And here's the
Really?
reason, the study that was published in the European Journal of Physiology that showed these huge increases in dopamine, that was the first of these sorts of studies. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but when you go in the cold for a very brief period of time, 1 to 3 minutes, and it's shockingly cold, you have to catch your breath, stabilize your mind, that evokes the dopamine, epinephrine, and norepinephrine release. These 3 things together are called the catecholamines. Those normally would increase from, a cup of coffee and a hard sprint for 10 to 30 minutes, maybe an hour. When you do the cold exposure, the way you're doing it, or longer exposures at about 50 degrees or so, you're seeing increases in dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine that are 2 to 3x above baseline. This is huge.
Wow.
This is huge. This is on the order of many drugs, but the difference is most drugs spike dopamine and then drop it below baseline. The increases in this case are lasting many hours, 2 to 4 to even 6 hours.
That's amazing.
And there are whenever people criticize deliberate cold exposure, they go, it's not leading to that much fat loss. Granted, but to my knowledge, there is no drug, nor is there any form of exercise, conventional forms of exercise, that increase the catecholamines to that level for that long. And with dopamine, it's all about the amplitude and the duration, how fast it rises, how fast it stays up there. There's nothing quite like it. And I did 3 plunges here. I'm staying at a place that actually has a plunge. I don't know the temperature, but it felt cold to me. So I did 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes in a hot tub, so it bounced back and forth. And as you know, you feel better much of the day, if not the entire day. That is not a coincidence. Your system is circulating much higher levels of the catecholamines. And this is shown in that paper. It's now been shown in a series of other papers. My colleague Craig Heller at Stanford has known this for a long time. And this is why, and for other reasons, the athletes at Stanford who use cold do it before the workouts.
Yeah.
Everyone now knows that it blocks hypertrophy if you do it after.
But if you wait a few hours, you're okay.
4 to 6 hours.
Yeah. I like to do it first thing in the morning just because I don't want to do it first thing in the morning. And that's why I like when people complain about cold plunges. That it's not worth it, it doesn't do anything. I'm like, fuck you, it doesn't. You just don't like the fact that other people can do it every day. And you don't like the fact that you can't do it every day.
You're talking to me specifically?
No, other
Okay.
people.
Yeah.
Not you, you do. But they're...
It's very soup. Very soup. Do you have?